All right, hi guys. So I'm going to talk to you about classes and IDs. Their main purpose is to give more specific attributes to subsections of your website. So the main difference between classes and IDs is that classes can be applied to multiple different types of objects, but IDs can only be applied once. So we'll start with classes. So we've given our website a background of a red color, but what if you wanted maybe your lists to be blue or something like that? What you would do is you would go into your list inside the tag, and you would say class, and then you can call it whatever you want to inside the quotes. We'll just call it lists. And then inside your style sheet, you're going to create another thing for your class. You do, since it is a class, you do a dot, and then you do the name of your class. You open and then close the brackets. And then we'll change the background color because that's what we want to do. And maybe we'll change it to blue. So that'll change background color for only the unordered list because we put it here. But since classes can be reused, what we can do is we can also put this in the ordered list. And then both of these will turn blue. So something else that you can do is called an ID, and this can only be applied to one thing. So if you wanted your paragraph perhaps to be a different color, you do ID is equal to, and then in quotes, you can call it P1 maybe. And then in our style sheet, since this is an ID, what we're going to do is a hashtag. So we'll do hashtag and then P1 because that's what we call our ID. And then we'll do background color. Maybe we'll say green. So that changes the background of our paragraph tag to green. But since this is an ID and not a class, we can only use this for this one thing that we put it. We could like move it to something else, and we could turn our list item green, for example. However, we can't use this ID more than once. So I'll put this back. So you can also apply multiple classes if you would like. So we can make another class called lists2, for example. And what you would do is you would put that inside the quotes with the original class that's already there. So we'll say lists2. And then we can make that in here. Again, since it's a list, we'll do a dot rather than a hashtag. So for this, maybe we want to do like center or something. You could do this for any sort of changing of the text that you would like, but I'm just doing with background color because it's kind of straightforward to see the differences. So this will center. And in addition to IDs, you can do classes and IDs in the same tag. So we can apply lists2 to this as well, if we would like, or we could do list1, whatever you would like. Not classes, but... Okay, and then in terms of sort of hierarchy, IDs will always be taken into consideration ahead of classes. So if our ID, in addition to text align, said text align left, that would be considered before the list that we've put in. So that would make this go back and be left aligned. And then in terms of multiple classes, it would be in the order in which they are in your CSS file. So if we had this being a background color as well, we'd say purple. So that would take precedence over list1 because in our actual CSS file, the list2 comes after, so that would be kind of considered first. Or that would be like, so the list1 would be applied and then list2 would be applied, so the list2 would overtake what happens in list1. Okay, so that's a little bit of an introduction to classes and IDs, and if you have any questions, you can come to office hours.
Hey guys, My name is Sherry. I'm a junior studying computer science. And so now we're going to look at how to use CSS to add border and specify spacing for our website. So here we have a simple website. I just have a little paragraph here. And I already gave it an ID called my bio. And I'm going to specify the CSS for this element here. Now, I only included this into the style part of the header just for simplicity of demonstration, but if you're building a full-fledged website, you really should have your CSS in a separate CSS file. So I already gave it a property, which is background color. I made it light gray. And so now we want to add a border to this paragraph. First thing we have to do is specify a border style. So we have many options here. First one is just solid. So if I just say solid and I refresh, I get a solid border. And I can also choose dotted and dashed. I could also choose double, which means we get a double border. All right, I'm going to change it back to solid. And we can also specify the width of our border by writing border width. And then let's say I want my border to be of width 5 pixels. Then I can refresh. And I can also specify the width of different sides of my border. So if I put 4 values in here, let's say I put 5, 10, 20, 30. This means that my upper width is 5, my width to the right is 10 pixels, my width to the bottom is 20, and then the width on the left is 30 pixels. So let's see that in action here. And yep, it looks kind of weird, but shorthand, if we want the width to be same for all sides, we just put 1 value. Okay, we can also specify the color of our border by doing border color, and let's say I want to make it purple. Okay, so there goes the 3 basic properties for a border, but CSS also gives us a way to write this all in a shorthand. So instead of specifying border style, width, and color separately, we can just use one property and combine all these together. So I'll just write solid, 5 pixels, purple, or let's say blue here. And I'm going to delete these 3, and you'll see that the effect is the same thing. All right, so one thing to note is that something you must have is this field here, which is you have to specify if it's solid, dashed, dotted, etc. And if you don't have this, you'll see that it doesn't show up. But if you do have this, you don't need these 2 values, and because CSS will just assume some default value, which is going to be black. All right, so there we have borders. Oh, something to note is that you don't have to have borders on all 4 sides. You can also specify that you only want this border to the left. So here it's on the left, or you can only have it on the bottom or on the top or on the right. I won't show all 4, but trust that it works. Okay, so there we have border. Next, we're going to look at how to specify spacing using CSS. So the 2 properties in CSS involved in spacing that you need to know are padding and margin. So padding is the amount of space you want between the content of your element and the border. And then the margin is the amount of spacing you want between your border and whatever is outside of this element. So first we're going to look at padding. So let's say I want to have a space of 10 pixels between my text and my border on all 4 sides. In that case, I would only put 1 number here, which means that I want a padding of 10 pixels on all 4 sides. So here, and we see that now we have a space between our content and our border. Now, if I wanted the spacing between my content and border to be different on all 4 sides, I'll specify 4 values. And they go in the order of top, right, bottom, left. So 10 pixels on top, let's say 30 pixels to the right, 5 pixels on the bottom, and 20 pixels to the left. And I refresh, there we have it. Another shorthand is only putting 3 values. If I want my top to be 10 pixels and both my left and right to be 30 pixels, and let's say my bottom to be 20 pixels, then I only have to specify 3 values, and there. Okay, last shorthand is just 2 values. So if I only put 10 pixels and 30 pixels, that means I want my top and bottom padding to be 10 pixels and my left and right padding to be 30 pixels. And let me save it. Refresh. There. Okay. So that is padding. Next, we're going to look at margin, which is how much space we want between our border and whatever this element is contained in and whatever is next to it. So for demonstration's sake, I'm going to add another paragraph here. Let's just say this is some other sections text. Okay, fresh. Okay, I'm going to add a color to this so that we can see the difference. Yellow. Okay, so you can see that by default, CSS gives a margin value, which means that if you have two P elements together, they won't be right next to each other because each P tag has a default margin value. So if I put auto here, nothing changes. Oh, whoops. Right, because we're already using the auto margin number, but I can also specify my margin on my own. So let's say I want my bio to be 50 pixels away from this next section. I can specify margin bottom is 50. I refresh, and now my other P tag got pushed to more downwards. And so like padding, we don't have to specify sides separately, and there's a shorthand. So if I want to specify a different margin number on all four sides, then I put in 4 values here. So in this case, the first value would be how much margin I want on top. So let's say 50 pixels, and I want 70 pixels to my right, say 30 pixels to the bottom, and let's say 70 pixels to the left. And refresh, and there. So now we get space outside of our border. We can also just put one value. And if I only put 50 pixels here, that means I want 50 pixels of margin for every side. So now we have 50. And okay, similar to padding, if I put 2 values here, then we have top and bottom is 50 pixels. That's the first value. And then the left and right, let's say 10 pixels. So you see a change here. All right, so now you see that the margin to the left and to the right are shrinked. Okay, so there we have margin. Okay, something else to note is that we don't have to have a solid border here. Even if I delete my border, the concept of a border to every element still exists because that's what we measure margin and padding with. So let's refresh. Okay, so even when I don't have a solid border, I can still change the margin and you'll still see a difference. And so margin and padding is what we use to specify the structure and layout of our website. And something else I want to show you guys is that this a border doesn't have to be angular. You can also make it round, which is what we see in a lot of web pages. So if I do border radius and make it 20 pixels. So the larger the pixel number here, the rounder it is. And I refresh. Now our border is a round border. Something like 10 pixels would make it look better. Yeah. All right, so there you go. Border, margin, and padding. Have fun playing around with this.
Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to show you how to kind of structure your web page and teach you about something called a div. So a div in HTML is a tag that basically acts as like a box, you can think of it, or like a container for other elements to go in. So this is our web page right now. And let's say we want to split up our web page into 3 main sections, like our header, the main body of the page, and like a footer, just so we have some general layout. How we would do that is we could create 3 divs. that contain the stuff we want in the header, in the body, and in the footer. So I'll show you how that works, and then we'll explain what we can do with that. So to create a div, you create an HTML tag called div, and just like every other tag, you have to close the tag. So I'm going to put this h1 tag and this paragraph tag inside my div. So this div is going to represent my header. Then I'm going to create a div to represent my body, and I'm going to put everything down here into this div. And lastly, I'm going to create a div for my footer. So if you look back at the page after saving this, it doesn't actually change anything on the page, because all it is just a box around the elements. It doesn't actually have any content to it. So one way we can see how this works is by giving each of these divs an ID, like you just learned about, and changing the background color so you can see what these divs actually enclose. So I'm going to give this ID header, this ID main, and this ID footer. So in my CSS, just remember, if you're talking about an ID, you'll put a hashtag and then the name of the ID. So header, I'll make one for main, and I'll make one for footer. And let's just change the background color so you can see very obviously what these refer to. So now if I refresh my web page, you'll see that this red div is our header because it has our h1 tag and has our p tag. The green is representing the body. It has our image, it has our lists. And then the blue one is representing the footer. It has our link that we put down here. So what you can do is, let's say I want to make this look a little bit nicer. So don't want to make it red. We'll make it like light gray. And we're going to add a border around it. And we're going to center all the text so that this applies, all of these attributes apply to everything inside this div. So both of these will be centered. So then I'll save both files and refresh. So now I have this gray div. I have a title and I have my description centered just like I wanted. And I'll do something similar for some of the other stuff. So I'll get rid of this ugly color and I'll make it pink. And I'll make the footer also light gray. And I'll also center the text in the footer. And I'll put, instead of having this link to Google, I'll put made by Ishan. So now when I refresh, my website now has a general structure to it. So you can put whatever you want here in the header, you can put whatever you want here in the main part of the body, and you can put whatever you want here in the footer. It's also a good idea if you have multiple pages to your website to have like a menu section where you can put links to different parts of your page. And if you want to make multiple pages to your website, all you have to do is create more HTML files. So create another one, call it something else. And if you want to put a link to it, so I'll just show you actually. We'll just create a new file. Let's call it page2.html, save it in the same folder. And then if I want to put a link to it, then let me just give page2 some content. And now on page 1 or my other page, I can put a link to page 2 and oops. And when I put my href. When we put it to other websites, we usually put like the URL, but since this doesn't have a URL, we can just refer to it by its file like this. And then on page 2, I can put a link back to page 1, something like this. And here we'll put the link to index. So now if I refresh, I have a link to page 2. This is page 2. Page 1 goes back to page 1. And now I have multiple pages on my website, and you can keep adding as many as you want and organize it in whatever way you want and be creative with whatever content you put on the website. But that's how divs work, how a general website layout looks, and hopefully you learned something over the course of these 3 weeks or these 3 lessons in Access Computer Science, and we're excited to see what websites you guys create. But
hey you guys, it's me, Jonavi, and today we are going to be learning how to take the websites that you guys have created on your local computers, and we're going to put them on the internet for everyone to see. And it's going to be super cool and super exciting. So let's get started. Okay, so first step, I want you guys to go to github.com and make a GitHub account. So pause right now if you haven't done that, and come back when you've done that. Okay, so I'm assuming that you guys have done that by now. So let me share my screen and let's get started. Okay, so go to github.com, and essentially what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to create a new repository. So I'm going to fake create a new repository because I already have my repository, but the repository name is actually going to be, repository name is going to be your username. So in this case, my username is Jonavi Chada. So jonavichada.github.io. Okay, then you're going to put in description. Description can be like access website, or maybe like Jonavi super cool website. I don't know, whatever you guys want, put that down. Then make sure it's public. Then you can skip all these steps, and I'm not going to actually create this repository because again I already have one, but again hit the back button. Then you're going to have this repository, and this repository is going to initially be empty. And what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to open it up in GitHub Desktop. So again, if you guys don't have GitHub Desktop downloaded, then I want you guys to go download GitHub Desktop. So again, pause over here, download GitHub Desktop, sign in, and then come back, watch the video. Okay, I'm assuming by now you guys have downloaded GitHub Desktop. So let's get started. You're gonna open up GitHub Desktop, and you're gonna go to your current repository. There should be a button over here if you guys haven't like downloaded, or once you guys have downloaded GitHub Desktop, that says open in GitHub Desktop. Again, it would be like over here if my mouse is hovering, and you're going to click that, and it's going to say it's going to clone the repository over to GitHub Desktop, and it'll be all good. I already done that step, so I'm going to skip over it, and here we are. So first step is that you guys have those index files, right? You have the index files, you have the CSS files, and I want you guys to open it up over here. So you're going to go to wherever you have those files downloaded, and you're gonna right click and you're gonna cut them. So like copy and paste, but you're gonna like take them out of one area. I want you to paste them in your repository. So the way to get to your repository on your desktop, on your local desktop, is you are going to go to downloads. Then once you're in, no, not downloads, I lied. You're gonna go to documents. You're going to go to documents. Then inside documents, you're going to click on GitHub, which should be over. I'm going crazy. I know GitHub's here. GitHub. You're going to go to documents. You're going to go to GitHub. Then you're going to go inside whichever is your repository. I have a bunch of repositories over here. My current repository that I want to go to is jonavichada.github.io. And then you're going to paste your files over here. Now, if you don't have your index file for some reason, that's okay. You can very easily make one. I'll make one right now. So let me copy this over, Control C. Then I'm going to click a new notepad, paste it. Then I'm going to save this. And I want to make sure to save it inside, again, this PC, documents, GitHub, then the name of your repository. And you got to make sure to name it index.html because that always has to be named at your beginning. I already have index.html files, so I'm actually going to cancel this right now because I already have one saved, but you gotta make sure to save it, and then you're gonna GitHub Desktop, and it's gonna have your changes. So in this case, I don't actually have changes, but I'm gonna make a fake change where I'm going to say I'm hosting GitHub Pages, And Johnavy is very cool. Right? It's the truth. So you're going to save this, and then you're going to go to GitHub Desktop, and it's going to list all your changes. So in this case, my only change is that I've added the line, and Johnavy is very cool. Your change will actually be the files that you've added, but I'll basically list out what changes that you've made. So in this case, I just updated index. And the description of what my change was is that I added a line. It's always good to put these like changes that you made. Then I'm going to click commit to master. I'm going to push origin. And it's doing its thing. Okay. So now we're going to go over here, and we're actually going to go to johnnychado.github.io, or your actual name, and you're going to reload. Once you download it, and you can see the update over here where it says hello world, I'm hosted GitHub pages. See, you can see the changes that you've made. In this case, I'm going to fetch my origin to make sure everything's going well. But yeah, see how easy that was? All you had to do was, it takes a second to upload just because of like all the changes, so it's not going to be instantaneous. So it's going to take a second to upload the actual line. I'll show you guys when it's done, but you guys will be able to later on go johnnychado.github.io and see those changes. But this is a really cool way. Now I posted my index online for anyone to see, and you guys will be able to also see it. So it's very cool. Let me know if you guys have any questions.